Natural gas, we got this record-breaking heat, hasn't done much for the commodity price, and aren't all the electricity generators switching over from coal to natural gas? Are we at bottom yet? Joining us now, Paul Killistoff. He's a senior commodities analyst at Enpro International. And Enpro, of course, is a firm that advises big energy users on how to plan their energy purchases. It's great to have you here, Paul, making your BNN and TV debut.
I'm very happy to be here, Andrew.
Wonderful to have you here. So, I mean, what's wrong with natural gas? We usually hear, oh, hot weather pushes it up. It hasn't really done much this year.
Well, the problem is that there's so much of it. Back at end of 2011, gas companies were drilling all of this gas, and they had nice hedges in place so that there was a lot of profit being made. Still into 2012, we're still seeing that scenario, and then the pinch started to come. Hedges dropping off, and you hear in the news about companies curtailing dry gas production and moving more over to wet or associated gas production. The problem with that is there's all that much more associated gas production with oil and propane and all these other wet wells. So it's still adding to the glut. Not as much as it was, but it's still adding. The injection numbers are a lot smaller than they were last year, but in June we actually hit an inventory level of over 3,000 BCF, which has never happened at that point in time in the history that the EIA has been looking at and taking these measurements. So 3,000 might be acceptable in October or November, but in July that's quite early.
So we're going into the shoulder season in a couple of months when consumption falls off.
Exactly.
Is there a risk that the giant salt caverns that are used for storage could fill up?
So there certainly is. The EIA has actually upped their prediction as to what they think is going to be, and they're looking at about 4,000 BCF, which is pretty close to capacity. Now, if you look at what happened in April, there were some hintings and rumors that we might reach capacity, we might overflow. So there were actually supply storage facilities that were turning gas away in fear of this happening in August. Now, gas prices, as you know, dropped to, what was it, $1.90 in the States, and that's the first time that had happened. They'd been well below $2 for several weeks in Canada at that point. And now you're looking at moving into another shoulder season where there isn't a hint of an actual overflow or glut, but we're going to be up to our arms in natural gas, and it's going to affect prices definitely.
So would producers potentially be forced to vent the stuff into the atmosphere?
Vent it, curtail production. Yeah, something's going to have to give eventually. It's like this bubble that just keeps building and building and building, and it's going to get to the point where they're either not making enough money, but with hedges in place and doing selling against futures. And they've been able to maintain, and some of the bigger ones have just fought their way through it to try and keep going to see if they can outlast the smaller producers. But eventually you're going to get to a point where there's no place to store it, and it's going to force curtailment. And then that's going to be a completely different scenario, and that's really going to impact the market and market sentiment and how the market thinks about natural gas prices moving forward.
You mean if they get serious about curtailing production?
Oh, definitely, yes. And just the fact that we'll have, if we do have such a large supply and inventory, that's really going to, psychologically, that's really going to affect the market, and it's really going to put a downward turn on prices.
When you're dealing with your customers who are big nat gas consumers, and you go in to talk to the CFO or the executive in charge of energy consumption, does he or she have a big smile on their face these days?
Well, yeah, gas prices have been excellent. Actually, we're heading into a really good opportunity now. Prices jumped a bit at the beginning of summer. You know, you looked at things getting hotter. There were some rumors of, more gas being used for electricity. Well, actually, they weren't rumors; they were actual facts. So these things presented themselves, and then the market reacted to that, and you saw prices bump up. But now that you're seeing more of, it's going back to, well, how much is actually in supply? And so they're thinking, the exact opposite. So it's having a negative impact on natural gas prices. But that being said, going into the fall, it could be a good opportunity to hedge your pricing for a November 1 year.
For big consumers. For
big consumers, definitely, yes.
Just tough for the producers, though.
Tough for the producers. Yeah, it's going to it's going to be interesting to see who survives. There's a lot of people producing natural gas. I know Chesapeake is hurting. Exxon was saying that they were having no difficulty several months ago, but now they've admitted to taking some losses, and And it's going to be interesting to see how things pan out, just who's left over at the end of this.
Unbelievable. And I mean, I know it's hard to generalize, but what price does the natural gas industry need to generate positive cash flow?
I believe around the 250 and MMBTU mark, and above. That is kind of the line which I've come across, and I've heard that they have to have that in place to be profitable and to be able to cover their expenses. And again, that was being done with hedges before, and with futures, hedging into futures and things like that. But now that hedges are coming off and prices have gone up a little bit, so it looks good. But then now they're sailing back down again, so it could be big trouble.
Paul, thanks so much.
Okay.
Hope you come back soon. Paul Killistoff, Senior Commodities Analyst at Enpro International, making his TView debut. Historic moment. Thanks very much indeed, Paul.
Thank you very much, Anchor.